was really asking for involvement with drafting of a new ordinance, and we weren't getting that. In fact, November 30th, it was scheduled, which was conveniently right after Thanksgiving holiday. So it meant that according to the Brown Act, we wouldn't get it until right before the Thanksgiving. Really not a effort to us. So just less than an hour ago, I get an email saying that it's now dropped from the November 3rd agenda. That's great. Let's keep this ship turning to have citizens be the captain. And I want to ask the Planning Commission, please, when it comes up, whenever it comes up, please listen closely and hard to the citizens who are now experts on wireless law and have spent thousands of dollars and tens of thousands of hours. Please do not listen to the cell tower attorneys that have been misguiding our city hall. They've socialized untruths, and it's all to stack up for the benefit of cell tower developers. Thank you again for fighting for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Taryn. And up next is Paul G. Paul, I've asked you to unmute.
Yes, thank you for your flexibility. I'm now going to look for my thing that I have right here, and good. So, planning commissioners, thanks for my time. I sent you an email a couple of weeks ago, and in it were links to my October 7th and October 27th addresses on YouTube. I'm one of those experts, and I'm actually spreading some of the information across the country. Now, tonight I have good news, bad news, and game-changing news. First, the good news. We prevailed at the California legislature in 2021. We worked full-time from April through October of 2021 to oppose Senate Bill 556, the Destroy Local Control and Child Endangerment Wireless Bill. On October 4th, Governor Newsom vetoed SB 556, writing in his veto letter, quote, "The provisions of SB 556 conflict with and complicate FCC requirements. So it would be imprudent to codify these requirements in state law. There is a role for local governments in advancing California's broadband. Local governments can take an active role in last mile broadband deployment," end quote. The same thing applies to our local laws. It would be terrible to codify in local law things that would complicate the FCC regulations, which are only presumptive orders. And so Mr. Danley doesn't quite understand this, and telecom law firm won't tell you this. So the point is, we work with Andrew Campanella, the #1 attorney in the country. He could help Petaluma. It's $8,500. He could write you the best ordinance ever. It's worth it. We should hire him immediately. Stop spending money with telecom law firm. So now some bad news. There were 3 bills that were passed, AB 537, AB 955, and AB 378. All 3 of them are scheduled to be repealed in 2022. We're going to go after them all, along with AB 57, which is another unnecessary wireless shock clock bill. Now, finally, here's the game-changing news. The wireless world irrevocably changed on Friday the 13th and August 21. What happened? 2021, due to the U.S. Court of Appeals ruling in case 20-1025. That's Environmental Health Trust and Children's Health Defense et al. Versus the FCC. On August 13th, the D.C. Circuit ruled the FCC's December 2019 attempt to continue to use its unscientific limits for human exposure to radio frequency microwave radiation was, quote, arbitrary and capricious, end quote. They wrote, "We grant the petitions in part and remand to the commission. The commission failed to provide a reasoned explanation for its determination that its guidelines adequately protect against the harmful effects of exposure to radio frequency radiation," end quote. A remand means that whatever the FCC attempted to do has been wiped out. That leaves the wireless industry with no microwave radiation guideline for anything higher than 6,000 megahertz. That's a big deal. Telecom law firm's not telling you that. I'm telling you the truth. Please give direction to the city manager and the city attorney and the M Group to engage with our group, Wire California, a national expert in this matter. Wire California works closely with the top telecom attorneys in the U.S., including attorneys Scott McCullough, Andrew Kemp.
Thank you for your comment, Paul. Unfortunately, we're out of the 3-minute allotted time for your comment. Up next is Lendry Purcell. Lendry, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. I attest and affirm that my statements are true and accurate to the best of my ability, my personal knowledge. I'm also speaking about the cell tower ordinance rewrite. I was made aware of EMF hazards over 5 years ago by an environmental working group scientist who is more concerned about EMF radiation exposure to children than a lot of the chemicals they're working on. I want to speak about a study that was published. It came out about a week before in August, the FCC ruling that Paul's talking about that deems the current quote safety guidelines totally specious. There was a peer-reviewed study by Environmental Working Group that was published that recommends stringent health-based exposure standards for children and adults for radio frequency radiation emitted from all wireless devices. And they're also talking about cell towers. They're talking about all EMF radiation. The guidelines are the first of its kind that look at non-thermal exposures to the whole body. And they're asking for 200 to 400 times more stringent exposure guidelines to our children than currently exist today. And so why would we do anything to expose our children more than they should be in a situation where we don't even know what the safety guidelines should be because the FCC has been deemed incorrect? So what I'm asking for is that the citizens of Petaluma, not the telecom law firm, have a big say in what our ordinance should be like to protect our families. We want to live in a place where we feel comfortable. We don't want to be like Santa Rosa, where we wake up and you find a mini cell tower on your lamppost and instantly you try to figure out who to sue in the city. We have a right to a safe home and safe spaces, safe schools, and we want to have a say. So what we need is to have a public workshop that happens before any of these items are put on any agenda behind the scenes or whatever is going on. And it's really ridiculous that or disappointing, I should say, that we would go with a firm that has explicitly has stated that they have ties to the wireless industry at a time. I'll tell you, last week, I co-hosted with HEFN, the Health and Environmental Funders Network, a webinar on EMF science with top scientists in the whole country. Any of you can reach out to them and talk to them directly. And over 90 environmental health funders attended and registered, and they were asking questions like, how is this going on? How do we get involved? How do we fight this in our city? These are people who are looking at mercury and lead and heavy metals, and people are just waking up to this hazard. Some have known about it more than others. This isn't something that we want to be lax on. This is something that we want to give our city the most stringent rights that we have to make the rules that we need. And so it's very important that we don't go backwards, and we should be having more protective standards, not less. And I'm very scared that the M Group has shown time and again, in my opinion, that they're not necessarily looking out for the health and safety of Petaluma residents. They need to work with us. This needs to be a completely transparent process.
Landry, I'm sorry you've run past the 3-minute allotted time for your public comment. I have muted you. And that does appear to be our last general public comment. I'll pass it back to Vice Chair Bauer.
Great, thank you very much, Eric. And we'll be done with general public comment and we'll close that. I'll now move on to committee comment. I don't think we have Council Liaison Fisher with us today, unless she showed up during the public comment.
I did.
Oh, you did, great. Okay, thank you and welcome. And we'll let you start off our
Sorry,
comment.
I apologize for being late. I was speaking to the school board, which we should do more of, I think. And I'm not prepared with my comments, so I'm gonna have to rely completely on Heather to see if we've actually done anything on council that would pertain to this body. I think really just districting is the only thing of note, but I'll let her fill in where I've lost. Thanks.
All right, great, thank you very much. Council Liaison Fisher. We'll move on to the Pedestrian Bicycle Committee, and that's Commissioner Hooper.
Thank you, Chair Bauer. At our last meeting, we discussed the upcoming developments for a pedestrian bicycle master plan, which has now been renamed our Active Transportation Plan. And we heard a really good presentation with regards to wayfinding signs. It looks like we're going to have a really good design soon to start to see wayfinding throughout the city. And just lastly, I wanted to say, with the seeming postponement of the Scannell mixed-use development, it would be great, especially for PBAC, if in the meantime we could really start to take a look at our parking minimums, because I was just looking at that project and realized mixed-use housing is something PBAC loves, but every time we have a development to vote on, usually there's way too much parking, and part of that's because of the minimums we're requiring. So it'd be great if in the time between now and when that project comes back, we could take a thorough look at rescinding or at least reducing our parking minimums.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Hooper. We'll move on to the Tree Advisory Committee, and that's Commissioner Wisman.
Yeah, no tree advisory meeting since our last commission meeting. The next meeting will be next Wednesday, so I'll have a report hopefully following commission
Great.
meeting.
Thanks very much, Commissioner Wisman. Now we'll ask if any other commissioners have any comment they'd like to add for now. I don't think I see any hands raised. So we'll go ahead and close that item and we'll move on to staff comment. And we'll start with the interim community development director, Heather Himes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. Good evening, commissioners. So kind of working in reverse order so I don't forget. Commissioner Hooper, we actually, staff met today about, we attended a webinar about parking reform, a number of us on staff, to just learn what some of the other communities were doing, had done, some lessons learned, and also met to talk about next steps with preparing for a study session about parking reform. So one that's not lost, it is definitely on our radar. We now have some staff capabilities to kind of take that to the next level. So we're looking at doing that after the new year, bringing forward a study session to kind of talk about different approaches, different options, get some feedback before we actually go back and write the code and bring it forward. One thing to note with the Scannell property, that is within the boundaries of the SMART code. So that area actually has our lowest parking minimums in the city, with 1 per 500 square feet of non-residential, 1 parking space per residential unit, and a half a parking space per affordable unit. So not that fixes everything, but it is in an area that's got our lower parking standards. In terms of what's going on at City Council, I do think there's 2 things that may be of interest to the Planning Commission. At the last meeting, the River Bend project asked for a permit to grade before approval of the final map, which is something that is at the discretion of the City Council. The City Council denied that request. They expressed a concern that the area that the River Bend project is in has some sensitivity and involves some removal of trees, and that until that final map is approved and everything is kind of set in place, that they did not want to issue the grading permit ahead of that. The other thing that might be of interest is tobacco retail licensing that is scheduled for the council, I believe, on Monday on the 15th. So consideration of ordinance for tobacco retail licensing. Let's see. In response to some of the comments by members of the public, we are working on an update to the telecommunication ordinance, and we have made a commitment to release a public review draft weeks ahead of when a typical packet would go out for the Planning Commission, in an effort to try to solicit comments and feedback before coming before the Planning Commission for consideration. There's been some requests to extend that to more than 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. We're open to that. It had been on the November 30th Planning Commission agenda. We have not been able to finish a public review draft and release it. So because we're coming up against that timing, we are pushing that to a later meeting. So we do have that public review time and feedback loop in the process that we are working towards. Also want to point out that the St. Vincent High School telecommunication facility that was previously targeted for the December 14th meeting will no longer be on the December 14th meeting. So we'll keep you posted on that. The SCANAL study session that is on the agenda will not be heard this evening. The applicant requested a continuance to a date uncertain of that discussion, so there was no information in the packet, and that is being continued to a date uncertain. No action needed from the commission to do that. Let's see. Ms. Obaid also brought up the floodway rezoning. That has not been just stopped completely. We are preparing to bring that back to the Planning Commission for discussion, and we're fleshing out some of the questions that the commission had. So it is not something that has been discontinued completely. It just has been postponed while we're able to put together the information requested and make sure we're providing the commission and the council with a full and detailed discussion of the codes and the options. And then finally, I just want to let you know that more of the existing condition reports that we did look at the summary overview of, there have been more reports posted to the planpetaluma.org website. So if you are interested in continuing for some, light reading, those are now up and available. And that concludes my staff updates.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Hines. I see that Commissioner Alonso has his hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. Heather, can you provide any update or movement on the Haystack project? Has there been any recent development there?
There has not been. Staff continues to reach out to the Pacifica company, and there's been no update. There's been no movement. We do hear periodically when we reach out that they're value engineering and looking at potential modifications, which we indicate a openness to sitting down and discussing with them to help make that project viable, but it has not moved to that point with the applicant team.
Okay, thank you. And is there an update on the Adobe Road Winery? It looks like they've stopped completely construction and there's really nothing happening for weeks or even months on that site. I was just wondering, given they came back earlier this year to amend part of their project, if there was any update there.
Right. So they did receive, I think it was like a grading and foundation permit while they looked at some of the revisions, changing their building permit to incorporate the revisions that were approved by the Planning Commission. I believe that the updated permit hasn't been issued yet, so they've completed the work they could do under that foundation and grading permit, and now are waiting for the issuance of the rest of the building permit. And I can follow up on that if there's different information than what I'm telling you off the top of my head, but I believe that's the status.
Great. And given that you just touched on some of the future meetings for the end of the year, could you just recap for all of us? So what are we looking like in terms of dates? We have November 30th, and then what are our dates in December, and what topics would we be hearing in December?
We have the 14th of December, which right now there is an application for the townhomes as part of the Riverfront project, the 40 some odd townhomes. That one is scheduled for the 14th of December. If we can bring the telecommunication ordinance that meeting, we will, but I don't want to promise that until I know when the draft is released to ensure that the public has time to review that draft ahead of time. And then there is a meeting on the 28th of December, which I know is nobody's favorite. So right now that doesn't have anything specifically targeted to it. And I've been trying to keep that open around the holidays, just kind of assuming that we could have some quorum issues, but it has not been canceled officially, depending on what may come up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Alonso and Heather. We'll now move on unless there are any other commissioner questions or comments. Raise your hand now if you have any. I don't see any, so we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for our October 26th, 2021. Are there any comments or changes or edits to that? Please raise your hand. Okay, I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and approve those. And then number 7 is the study session for the Scanel mixed use development, which has, as Ms. Hines said, is being continued to a date uncertain. So we'll skip over that, and there is no vote necessary to move forward with that. And next we'll move on to our main agenda item, which is the Spirit Living mixed use development. And that will be presented to us by our principal planner, Emmanuel Ursu. But first we have our Commissioner Ryder wants to recuse herself from that. So I'll go ahead and Commissioner Ryder, let you take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. So just so you're all aware, I have an active client that is the architect on this project. So I'm just going to, out of an abundance of caution, I'm not affiliated with this project of any kind, but I'm going to recuse myself from this particular discussion.
Great. Thank you very much, Commissioner Ryder. And are there any other ex parte communications that any of the commissioners would like to disclose? Okay, seeing none, we'll now move on to our presentation portion of the meeting. Take it away, Mr. Ursu.
Thank you, Chair Bauer, members of the Planning Commission. Just make sure you can see my screen. So this is a resubmittal of a conceptual proposal submitted by Spirit Living for development around the central green at the Riverfront project. Just as a reminder, the Riverfront development is this approximately 40-acre site just west of Highway 101, north of the Petaluma River, south of Lakeville and the Smart Railroad. The Scanel project, which was just referenced, is proposed on this property next door, which is also roughly 40 acres. This area here is the city's courtyard and the COTS facility. The site is designated mixed use in the general plan, and the zoning of the two parcels in question is T6. The Lewis Homes project, which is the 44 townhomes that the director mentioned, Director Hines mentioned, is on this parcel here. This will be before the Planning Commission on December 14. The Courtyard Marriott Hotel is in this area. This is the future ball fields. And then North Bank, which is the single family component of the Riverfront project, is south of the center of the development of the Riverfront development. This is lot 6, and lot 5 is on the west side of the central drain. In 2014, when the city approved the Riverfront project, it approved several specific uses for this area. Around the central green, the approval was for up to 30,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space, and then up to 100 apartments on the upper floors. The hotel was approved in this area, townhomes in this area, and then the single family homes in this area. With that approval, the council, that part of its vision was for a vibrant mixed use walkable community in the center of the development, especially. And so that is kind of the lens through which we've requested the Planning Commission look at this conceptual proposal. This table compares the June proposal that was presented in July to the Planning Commission to the proposal that is presented this evening. This shows lot number 5. So this is the smaller of the two lots, the one on the west side of the central green. In the first proposal, they had about 1,500 square feet of ground floor commercial space, 4,500 square feet of work live, almost 5,000 square feet of support facilities for the residential care facility. And then the second and third floors were all memory care facility units. There are a total of 56 memory care units. 31 parking spaces were provided in conceptual proposal. As revised, there are no memory care or resident senior housing units on this lot. So they're removed from this parcel. The ground floor is almost entirely work live. So almost 15,400 square feet of work live. And then about 1,500 square feet of area devoted to the lobby and amenities for apartments that would be built on the second, third, and fourth floor. One thing to note is this is different from how it's also different from the first proposal. Is this has 4 stories versus the 3 stories that were proposed with the first submittal. There are 17 units per floor with a total of 51 units on the 3 floors. There are also 57 parking spaces. The way the additional parking spaces are provided is by providing tandem spaces. So there several of the spaces are tandem spaces. On lot number 6, this is the larger of the 2 lots. This is on the freeway side of the central green, the east side of the central green. They have increased from about 1,500 square feet to almost 10,000 square feet, the amount of area devoted to commercial space. They have 4,200 square feet of space devoted to work-live units, down from 12,000. And the amount of support space for the residential care facility for the elderly is cut half, down from 10,000 to 4,600 square feet. And then they have on the second and third floor, they have the independent units. Many of these units will have full kitchens and their own bathrooms. There'll be 33 per floor. And then on the 4th floor, they'll have 55 rooms dedicated for the Alzheimer's assisted living component. The parking has not changed in this on this lot, 60 parking spaces. The code does, in the smart code, it does allow spaces that front the property to be counted toward the parking requirement. And so these counts include 6 spaces on the east side and 4 spaces on the west side. This is a graphic that shows the layout that was presented to the Planning Commission with the initial proposal back in July. Basically, the southern half of Lot 6 was devoted entirely to the residential care facility for the elderly. The north half was for commercial and work-live. And then on Lot 5, the residential care facility amenities are basically in the center with some commercial on either end. And I believe these were also primarily work-live. And then the upper floors, this was the second and third floors of the initial proposal. These were the independent assisted living units, and these were the memory care units on Lot 5. So in the revised proposal, the residential care facility is limited to this area here in green. Let me zoom in a little bit. So this is the lobby reception area and then a community lounge area. This is exclusively for use of the residents of the facility. The space on the far north end is about a 1,500 square foot space devoted to commercial use. And then they have 3 work-live units. And then these commercial spaces are open to the general public, hallway at the back that provides direct access for residents of the facility to access these uses. The way it was described to me by the applicant, they would make these spaces commercially available, but if they did not find tenants that could take these spaces, they would operate the businesses in these spaces. So they have a fitness facility, a day spa, art center, and then they have a flex space. And then the same is true over on the south side. They'd have a bistro, restaurant. These would be open to the general public, but also be accessible directly to the clients of the facility. And again, the clients on the building number 1, which is on lot 6, these are the independent living units. So these would be folks that would not need the same level of care as at least on the 2nd and 3rd floor, would not need the same level of care as the residents in the memory care facility or units, which would be on the top floor. Building number 2 is all work live on the ground floor, with the exception of this green area. This is the lobby, reception, I don't know if it's reception, but lobby and leasing office, fitness facility, other amenities for the residential units on the upper floors. All of the work units have lofts. These stairs that you see here go to a loft area that is above the parking. These are the tandem parking spaces that are included. There's some that are not tandem, but most of them are tandem. And then at the next level, which is a mezzanine level, this would be just about on building 2. So these are the lofts that look over the work live portion that's on the ground floor. Then on the 2nd and 3rd floors, building 1, which is lot 6, these are the independent living units for the seniors, and these are 17 market rate apartments that would just be available to the general public. Level 4 would be the assisted living facility for the memory care clients. And in building 6, or excuse me, lot 6, building 1, on lot 5 and building 2 would be a repeat of the 2nd and 3rd floor, which is 17 units. So some of the input provided by the Planning Commission at the June meeting was mixed input, and I summarized it in the staff report and also put it in these slides. There was an acknowledged need for this type of use in Petaluma. There was not. There was concern that it would not add to the vibrant mix of uses. There was common theme among many of the planning commissioners. There was concern with the loss of planned apartments and concern with the ground floor use being less than vibrant and really detracting from the hub that this area was envisioned to be for the overall Riverfront project. This is just a summary. I'm not going to read through each of these, but they are also in the staff report. Just here, the question, one of the questions before the Planning Commission is whether or not the, let me go on to the next, whether or not the use proposed is similar to other uses allowed in the T6 zone, and whether it is consistent with the vision of the general plan and the Central Petaluma specific plan, which applies to this area. These are some of the general plan policies that would apply. The T6 zoning standards, uses that are allowed on the ground floor are highlighted in this table. Work-live units are allowed. They are subject to a conditional use permit, and there are some additional restrictions that apply. These are examples of some of the other uses allowed. This continues on to the next slide. Yeah. Child care centers is a comment that was received at the from a member of the public as being a use that would be appropriate. It is not allowed on the ground floor. Street frontage would be allowed on the ground floor, but not street frontage. So again, these are the mix of uses that are permitted in the T6 zone. There are a handful of findings that would be required to make in order to allow a use that is not explicitly permitted or listed in the smart code. And these are the criteria by which a use not listed would be allowed. And again, there are 5 of them that are listed in the smart code. So again, this is no action required by the Planning Commission this evening. The applicant is here and available to answer questions. And I believe they may have a brief presentation of their own. The input that the Planning Commission provides will, I think, help the applicant to decide whether or not to proceed with purchase of the property. They are in contract, but do not yet own the property, as far as I know, unless that has changed recently. So with that, I will conclude my presentation and open up for any questions the commission may have.
Great, thank you very much. I think we'll maybe, can we do questions after the applicant presentation, unless you have some burning question right now, Council Liaison Fisher? No, okay. Let's see if the applicant has a presentation that they want to do now.
Yes, good evening, Commissioner Bauer. My name is Amir Kia, and I'm with the Spirit Living Group, the project sponsor, along with my business partner, Ali, and my brother. We thank you for taking the time for this study session. As you recall, we came before you in July. We received a lot of feedback, and we've taken your feedback to heart. We worked with planning staff, and essentially we went back to the drawing board and redesigned the project to address the concerns that we heard. Our revised proposal, we feel, goes a long way towards activating the central green. It creates more housing units, and it still provides much needed senior housing and services for a very underserved aging population in Petaluma and South County. We'd like to share just a couple of the highlights of these changes, and like your permission to use to share the screen, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Amir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do you see on the screen building 1 and building 2? Okay. So the first big change that we made is that we increased the total ground level commercial from 3,000 square feet to 30,000 square feet around the central green, which was originally planned for in 2014 through a combination of work-live commercial spaces and the pedestrian easements that run through the properties. This is more than 80% of the total commercial space available on these two sites. And as Emmanuel had mentioned, the areas in gray, in purple are the spaces that are commercial open to the public. The beige area are public easements that we're required to have that cut through the building. The majority of the space, as you can see on the ground floor, is now open to the public and will be activated. We've also opened the restaurant and bistro on the ground floor of Building 1 to both the public and the seniors. We intend to have sidewalk seating. The sidewalk is about 12 to 14 feet wide. We plan to have floor-to-ceiling storefront windows, and our goal is to really encourage community engagement and activity. And by having the space open, we're hoping that the restaurant and that space will have sufficient volume to sustain itself, as this area is quite bare and desolate. The ground floor amenity spaces, you see that in the green. We've reduced that to about 10% of the total ground floor area. And these spaces are very similar to what the Marriott Hotel was allowed to do across the street, basically lobby, reception, business office, gym. The next big change is that we eliminated senior housing completely from lot 5 or building 2 on the bottom you see. And now we're proposing 51 apartments over commercial work-live spaces to address the housing needs of Petaluma and contribute to the rent allocation. We're hoping also to provide 121 units of senior housing on Building 1 or Lot 6. And we'll be working with staff to try to qualify an additional 66 of those senior housing units towards the rent allocation by having complete self-sufficient units for more independent and active seniors. So with kitchens or kitchenettes and in-unit laundry machines. So between the two lots, we're hoping to provide approximately 117 units in terms of the housing allocation, which is more than 100 units that was originally planned for in 2014. The next big change, based on your feedback, is that we took the units and amenities for the more frail seniors and moved them to the top floor of Building 1, as recommended by staff. This floor is now self-contained with all its services and amenities for these units, including dining, activities, outdoor spaces. And this floor accommodates an additional 55 units of senior housing and allows seniors to age in place in the community. So for the senior more active and independent, they can stay in the neighborhood. They don't have to be displaced. Based on our experience, about 75% of residents in the senior community will be actually Petaluma residents. So based on that, it will free up another 90 units of housing when these seniors move into this community from their own apartment or home. In addition to providing much needed housing across different age groups, we feel our proposal also has some other merits. We are bringing and hiring 45 new employees. We will have social workers, doctors, friends, family members visiting at this location, and we believe that actually will create activity and will energize the area and actually create a really vibrant pedestrian-oriented neighborhood, which is in line with the intention of the plan. We actually feel it's going to be more vibrant than what was originally conceived in 2014, because we intend to run these spaces from day one when we open. I'd like to illustrate just in a few points about our design philosophy, design philosophy, and I'd like to use our project in Berkeley as an example. This is a mixed-use senior housing project that's under construction in a very active commercial corridor of Berkeley, just off of University Avenue. And it reflects a collaborative effort with the city of Berkeley and our neighbors to create an active, pedestrian-oriented ground floor by designing a corner cafe, bistro, a salon, fitness center, and art lab, which is open to the public. This gives you an idea of kind of the context of where the location is in terms of the commercial area that it's located in. In terms of our design philosophy, we believe very much in creating spaces that promote community engagement and integration. We reflect that in our design. So our ground floor spaces are designed with floor-to-ceiling storefront windows that open out to the community, which is different than other senior housing communities that you would typically see. This is a rendering of corner location. Is a very prominent corner location on San Pablo Avenue, where there's an active commercial corner, and the space right next to the corner is the art lab and other spaces that are open to the public. So you'll notice on this ground floor schematic, the blue area reflects all the spaces that have been designed to face outward and to invite the community to join in this space with the seniors. This gives you an example of one of the spaces. This is our art lab. Again, you can kind of get the idea for our design philosophy, the storefront windows, the activity that actually takes place along the windows with the seniors in the building, along with community members. This space in particular will be in collaboration with Sticky Art Lab, which has a location in Berkeley, and they have after school and homeschool program for kids. And we have a number of schools that are in our area that we intend to integrate kind of in the daily life of the community. So I just want to contrast this. This design philosophy is what we're looking to implement on these two sites. And I just want to contrast it from other design philosophies that are more inward facing, and they're not meant to really encourage that interaction with the community. This is a couple miles down the road from us. This is one in Petaluma. This is the actual site. I thought maybe a picture would kind of give a little bit more life to what we're looking at. As you can see, they're challenging sites to work with. They're narrow and long. They present quite a number of challenges. The 2014 Riverfront Plan was actually conceived around 2010, so it's more than 11 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. But the intention has always been to create a vibrant, walkable, mixed-use neighborhood and a pedestrian-friendly neighborhood character. In that sense, we feel our proposal creates actually more housing and more genuine pedestrian-oriented neighborhood engagement. And it does that with less parking requirement, and much less traffic impact because most seniors don't drive. And we offer a shuttle service with a full-time driver. We think our plan meets a big challenge and need for this area by creating a vibrant, multi-generational neighborhood that will be active from day one with a mix of ages that draws together families, relatives, friends, kids, grandkids, grandparents, visiting, intersecting, engaging, going for walks. It's vibrant, it's pedestrian friendly. In our view, it's what really defines a neighborhood. Our proposal also addresses the huge need for senior housing in Petaluma. As I had mentioned before, there are only 3 senior communities in Petaluma providing 280 beds. And when we toured them, they were full with waiting lists. There hasn't been a new senior housing community built in Petaluma in 30 years. In other words, Petaluma seniors have nowhere to go and nowhere to age in place. By comparison, a Bay Area city of similar size like Walnut Creek has 1,600 beds, and they're typically full. In conclusion, we feel our proposal reflects a lot of the voices we've heard and will bring significant benefits for Petaluma residents. Just philosophically, we genuinely believe that our parents, our grandparents should benefit from engagement with the rest of the neighborhood. It's basically why my brother and I started in this field 25 years ago, because we just didn't see this was not happening. Buildings were very much isolated, and we're hoping to make that possible here as well. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kia. We'll now move on to commissioner questions for staff and the applicant. Commissioners, if you want to raise your hand, we'll take you. Okay, we'll hear what Council Liaison Fisher has to say.
Yeah, I have a question, Emmanuel. The bistro and the restaurant are said to be able to be accessed by the back hallway for the residents, but there seems to be back of house and staff and offices and a kitchen in the way of that access on this plan. Is this plan not accurate, or is the fact that they can get to the back not accurate?
I think the plan is accurate, and this may be a question for Amir to answer.
Yeah. The plan is accurate. The access to the bistro and restaurant on that side is actually through the building, because you'll see the area in green that are the lobby reception area. So we have direct access already from the inside. It's the other buildings that didn't have access, so we created it by creating a back access.
So how, as a resident, would I access the bistro if I'm not on the sidewalk?
You go through the community lounge. That dark black line should, there be like an opening in some location of it.
And then would I walk through the bistro to get to the restaurant?
Yes.
Okay. And another question, this is a larger question in context, and what is the status of the rest of the project? I think, yeah. So the public paths, the watercraft facility, the Riverfront Park, and the office, apparently the other ones that haven't been finished.
Yeah, so Tri-Point Homes is developing the single-family homes. As a condition of approval of the overall project, when the 80th building permit is issued, or the building permit for the 80th home is issued, the Riverfront Park is required to be completed. The park that is behind Lot 5 was to be completed with issuance of the 40th building permit. Because of the drought, they were ready to install the turf. Otherwise, the park is complete. The trail along the east side of the project that is adjacent to the Tri-Point component will be completed with the Tri-Point component of the project. And then the rest of that trail that goes up towards the smart rail line will be completed with the construction of the townhomes. At the December 14 meeting of this year, next month, the 44 townhome units will come before the Planning Commission for SPAR approval. And the last component of the project is the office building at the north of the hotel. There has been no conceptual plan brought before us. We have not seen any development proposal for that lot yet.
And so my understanding is that we approved this project with a developer and then they sold off the parcels.
Yeah, so Basin Street was the master developer that came in, got the process, the general plan amendment, the zoning amendment, and the tentative map for the overall project. Had the prepared the EIR, and all of those entitlements were processed by the master developer. They then sold components off to various builders, various other developers. So Tri Point Homes is building the single family homes. The Courtyard Hotel was developed by a hotel builder. Lewis Homes is going to build the condos, and then the office is to be determined. Same with the area around the Central Green.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Great, thank you very much, Council Liaison Official. Now move on to Commissioner Hooper.
Thank you. I just have a few quick questions. First for staff, then for the applicant. Is there just for staff, is there a plan to apply better visibility paint for the existing bike lanes for this area? Just looking at the area now, I'm just wondering if there's going to be any green striping or anything to make it pop a little bit, especially with all the proposed commercial activity.
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that there are improvement plans that were approved through the city, which may have been approved before we started using green paint, to be honest with you, because it's been in the works for so long. I'm seeing Gina maybe popping on us. I didn't want to call you out, Gina, but thanks for turning your camera on. So I'm not sure that that's incorporated into the public improvement plans for the project.
Question was if green paint is part of the bike ped plan there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall seeing green paint. Where were you thinking that would be spotted?
I was primarily focusing on that, is the urban green, the oval circular area in the center where there's the most commercial activity. Because just having gone to that site recently, right now it's kind of hard to see standard white lines that don't kind of continue or finish all the way. I only bring this up because if there's as much commercial activity as is proposed, I get a little worried about folks not seeing the bike lanes.
I don't know specifically, so I can double check. My recollection is no.
Okay.
Similar to Heather's, and I would add that we tend to reserve the use of green paint for high conflict areas. So you might see green paint used as you approach along arterials or collectors, as you approach intersections where the conflict percentage increases. And I'm not, this would be an unusual application for green paint based on what I've seen our traffic engineers recommend in past. But that's, that's without my double checking on the improvement plan. So I will do that. Heather and I can follow up with you and get you a confirmation one way or the other on that.
That's fair. And thank you. I only brought it up because it does seem like a high conflict area just based on the lawns in the center, public activity, cars that are going around, and just the fact that in Petaluma people have a hard time with anything that's not a standard four-way intersection. So it's just what.
Right. Yeah, it is a confusing area. I agree. It's just such a low speed that normally it's not a place where we would look to green paint. But I understand, and green paint is paint. So that wouldn't be a tough add if our traffic engineers concur on that.
Enough. And then I wanted to ask if at some point, and this is less for this project, but for the area overall, there is a transit stop that kind of stops short of actually going into the Riverfront mixed-use project area. And I was just wondering if at any point down the road, there's a plan to expand transit routes into the project area, or if that's just something that's further down the road that hasn't been considered.
So as part of the Scanel project, there are 2 bus stops on Caulfield Lane, just to the west of the ball field. So basically about a block away from lot 5.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you. And then this is my last question for staff. Thank you for your patience. Is there a predetermined evacuation plan for the area? I only bring this up because if we have senior living happening in this area, it might affect the plan. And I was just wondering if that was a consideration.
Well, I think there was, the swoop, if you will, out at D Street, and the EVA that currently runs from this project behind the courtyard out to that, and then through the swoop, was the approved emergency vehicle access in case you couldn't get across the tracks closer to. So that was the temporary EVA that was put into place. Obviously, the idea of the Caulfield crossing over the river would provide another way out if that comes to fruition. I think that is what I have to add to this. So if you couldn't get over the smart tracks there at Caulfield, the idea would be you would go down Hopper and get to the swoop and be able to get out that way.
Gotcha.
So that's how it was approved. That was the secondary access until such time as the Caulfield crossing came over the river to provide another access point.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then I just have 3 questions for the applicant. First question I wanted to ask, where is it planned for both, I guess would say visitor bike parking and then also residential bike parking?
The parking is the bike parking for residents and visitors are at both ends of the lots, and I can see if I can if I'm at, yeah, right there, yeah.
Oh, I see. So it'll kind of funnel out at the end.
Right, and then there's another one on the other end, and then on the other end as well. So we're trying to put them kind of at the corners.
Will there be any bike parking for commercial activity? I mean, in the theoretical situation where you have people biking in and out of the area?
Yeah, I mean, definitely we could put it, we haven't gotten too granular, but we'd love to have the more biking, the better. And we can definitely incorporate it into the buildings.
Excellent, thank you. And then one more question I have. For the housing units, will you be considering any percentage of them affordable? Or an affordable bracket, I should say.
Yeah, we're looking at that. These sites are part of the as part of the master plan. There's a whole slew of fees, impact fees, and requirements that affordable housing requirements that pertain to them. We're kind of making our way through that, but we don't have a definite answer to that right now.
That's fair. Thank you.
Is that it, Commissioner Hooper? Okay, great, thanks. I don't know who had their hand up first, but I think it was Commissioner Wissman. So I'll go with Commissioner Wissman next.
Great, thanks, Vice Chair Bauer. Couple questions as a liaison to the Tree Advisory Committee. I just wanted to confirm the circles that I see, the rounds that are both fronting of building 1 and 2, and then behind building 2. Those indicate trees, is that correct?
Yeah, so the Riverfront project as a whole was brought before the Tree Advisory Committee several years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, before as part of the infrastructure improvement plan. And so there was a master plan for planting all the street trees in the entire project. And so that was reviewed and approved with input from the Tree Advisory Committee at that time.
Right. So those are that's what I'm seeing on the sidewalks and behind building 2.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to confirm that. Thank you. And a couple questions for the applicant. You mentioned moving some of the senior and memory care residents to the upper floors. Is it all feasible? Is there a prospect at all of having rooftop area as kind of a lounge and outdoor accessible area for the seniors that either can't get down and enjoy the outdoor spaces outside the building? So just wondering if that's could be a feasible component.
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. We would love that. I think it's a question of a couple things. One of cost, because the building construction now is a lot more expensive. It's type 1, type 1B construction. So that's just it's a concern to us. We'd love to do it. The one thing that the slide that Emmanuel's putting up doesn't show is that the viewing deck is now extended to the whole length of the living area, so all the way to where the rooms are. So we try to make that as big as possible. I think that's almost 1,500 or 1,800 square feet, if I'm not mistaken. But we will definitely look at that, and if we can put it, it would be an amazing amenity to have.
Great, thank you. One additional question to the applicant. For building 1, the one that's going to be now, this will be senior, what is the criteria for acceptance of those residents?
The criteria, I believe there is an age criteria. I think you have to be like above 60. I believe that's one criteria. Besides that, there's really no criteria for acceptance. When the healthcare conditions become too extreme, we're not allowed to accept them. So anything like a ileostomy or colonoscopy, like trach tubes, ileostomy bags, really heavy duty, like skilled nursing needs are typically not allowed. We can't really do it. So I don't know if Ali has any other input on that, but that's what I can think of. By the way, some younger residents can come in if you're younger than 60. If their needs are compatible with the community, and as long as the entire building doesn't turn into like everyone turns into a much younger age group.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Wiseman. Commissioner Alonso?
Yeah, thanks. Vice Chair Bauer, do you want us to make comments now or just wait until later on?
Yeah, let's wait until after we hear public comment. So right now, just questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Okay. I see. There's two more. Commissioner Wiseman, is your hand just still up, or do you have another question? Okay, good. Okay, Commissioner Hooper.
I apologize. I just had one more question, and it's only because of recent flooding. What's the plan right now for when we get these high atmospheric rivers? Because having been by there recently, it looks like a giant puddle. And I was wondering, is this a scenario where it's more fill being brought in to elevate the property? Has there been more storm drains put in the area? Just wanted to check on that.
Tina, you're muted.
Thanks. I'll try and field this. Commissioner Hooper, I don't know that there's any planning protocols for atmospheric rivers.
I just
per se,
put flooding,
so,
really all
right?
I meant.
And the project had met all of our city floodplain requirements. And I don't know that very much of this property actually is in the floodplain. And I'd have to look back. That question hasn't come up in a long time, so I don't recall. I'd have to look at my maps to see what that is. And so I'd like to take a few minutes to look back on my maps and see, and maybe I can address your comment more thoughtfully.
Thank you.
The one thing I would add to that is the current grade out there is lower than what the finished grades will be.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Hooper. Let's see, I don't see any other questions. I just have two questions. One is, I didn't see this, but are there going to be elevators? I don't think so, right?
Yes.
Oh, there
There'll
are.
be, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, that's good. I was hoping that it would be, there would be elevators for seniors. The other question is on the staff report. I saw that on page 15, it says there's 9,925 square feet of pedestrian-oriented commercial use in Building 1. And I'm wondering, is that what I know the restaurant and the bistro are pedestrian-oriented, but what are the other things that you are counting as pedestrian-oriented? Because I know it also says right above it that pedestrian-oriented are things that don't require appointments usually.
Yeah, so let me show you the floor plan. So this is Building 1. The areas that are included in that calculation are this commercial space at north end, these 4 spaces in here, the bistro, restaurant, and this area back here. It does not include the 3 work live spaces that are called out separately in that table.
Okay, I was just wondering about the other one, like the fitness and day spa. Those they were considered pedestrian oriented because they do require appointments.
I guess the day spa, I suppose you need an appointment, but not necessarily for the fitness center or the other uses. But I did include those.
I think to go there, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think you'd have to be a member to hop in.
True. Yes.
So, okay, I was just curious where you got that number from. Okay, I think those are the only questions I have. So now we can move on to public comment, and I'll let our moderator, Eric Roberts, take over from here.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer. I see we have 3 comments on this item. I'll go ahead and share my timer. Okay, and up first is John Shribs, followed by Janice Cater Thompson. John, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. First, I've been able to, because I'm in several, lots of meetings recently this last year, looking at things, because I'm also serve on several different committees here for the city and county. I've seen the histogram of Petaluma, and it definitely shows a huge bunch of folks, high population in the 55 to 65 range. A large bubble is coming, and we're going to really have this need. So thank you for helping us with this need for this growing a huge population bubble we have coming up. We need as much adult housing, senior adult housing as we can. I do have some HUD housing right next door to me. And over the last 30 years, the rules have changed and who they allow in, what happens there, and how we've been impacted by these changes. And the impacts of having this community next to us is the number of old junk cars that have shown up, 2 and 3 per person on these things, and without any restrictions. Now there's no parking on anywhere on our street because of all those extra vehicles now. They're old and ugly, a lot of them. We also have the smokers that are no longer allowed to smoke indoors or even on site. And so now we have a bunch of smokers basically in front of our homes, and that's a residential community as well. Will they be pushed? Will the smokers be pushed outside if there's no smoking, and who are they going to interfere with? That's just an issue with our immediate community here. And then also there's not a lot of community activity going on inside the rooms, and there's nothing planned for these folks. The rooms have been gutted for COVID, and so they're all pretty much outside having these very loud conversations going on. So we need to be able to, I think there needs to be an assistant manager or a manager who's doing assistance services, needs to be on site and working constantly to help folks in all these different ways, including medical. Another thing that's coming up, because I'm also involved in some of the meetings about green buildings and the like, but electric, and also I have electric car and electric bicycle, and I see a huge shift into electric cars, electric scooters, electric trikes, electric bikes, and we need to have lots of charging ability because there's no garages. These folks are going to need charging stations for their scooters and trikes so that they can get around town with these things. So you need to have lots of charge stations designed for them, not just for big EV cars like Teslas, which they're not going to own that much, but they're going to own a bunch of small things, a bunch of small cars and scooters. There needs to be spaces for them for that particular need, because there'll be a lot of it. If they're not totally disabled, they want to travel on their own and do all that. So those are things. And then finally on the flooding, I saw the flood maps and the FEMA maps now, and I saw the other 3 or different organizations, global organizations, show that area is really prone. The next over 3 feet, even 10 feet in 200 years, there'll be going to be 10 feet sea level rise now, is what I'm hearing. So yeah, we need to work on that flooding area because it's going to get flooded down in this next few years for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Up next is Janice Cater Thompson, followed by Christa Barnett. Janice, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you very much. I actually took photos of the area during the atmospheric river, the flooding, and it's very significant. And I really think that the committee needs to see these photos. I sent them to Heather and Gina. I don't know if you've received them, but it looks like it's a complete river there. And so you're going to take all this fill, you're going to put in the area, raise all of that area. And in the last storm, we had flooding in the Payran area from D Street south. And when I went into where the new hotel is and all of that housing where the land was raised, there was no flooding there, but yet in the property right next door, it was literally a river in there. And so I'm hoping that those photos can be shared with you so you can really get a visual of what can happen. And I remember when this project was originally approved, and a big sticking point was really safe access in and out. And the access that was approved, I do not think is acceptable. And this is why Caulfield Crossing is very important. But the river, the flooding should be number one. And the photos tell a story. And where flooding ended up, I'd like to know where that water goes from where the hotel and the part of the riverfront that's already completed, where does that water flow to? Did that contribute to the flooding on Lakeville all the way down to Payran Street? So each, like Vallejo Street, Edith Street, they were all closed for flooding. Did that water come from this site? Where did it come from? And where is this water in these photos that I have? Where's it going to go? And I think we have to be very realistic that we do have climate change. We have sea level rises. This is right next to the river. And this is an area when I was raised in this town, when the road off Lakeville, the recent one, I can't remember the name of it, flooded, it always flooded. And now it's flooding again. And so there's real concern for me for the past that we tried to fix with a flood control project, but also pumping stations. This goes back to when Tom Hargis was with the city. And I remember him talking to me about that particular area, and they did a pumping station. I really don't remember much about it, but are they obsolete now because of climate change? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janice. Up next is Christa Barnett, followed by Susan Kirks. Christa, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Christa Barnett Nelson. I am the Executive Director of Senior Advocacy Services, and we hold the Ombudsman Program. And I just wanted to make a couple of comments and just a correction on some facts. The gentleman making the presentation stated that we only have 3 facilities. We actually have 16 facilities in Petaluma with 368 beds. I think he's referring to 3 large facilities, but we do have a significant number of small 6-bed facilities and 1 6-bed DD home, that developmentally disabled home that also is licensed as a residential care facility for the elderly. Speaking to the gentleman who said there needs to be medical care on site, that is not allowable by licensure for a residential care facility, but there is always a requirement that there be management on site, and they are required to have enough staff on duty that is appropriate for the care of the individuals in their homes. I also just wanted to clarify, I know people think, well, this adds to the housing. I just want to make sure that people understand that we absolutely can use more beds available, but these beds are coming at a significant cost. These are not individuals who are on Social Security or limited income. On average, there is, well, not even on average, there are no residential care facilities in Sonoma County that cost less than $3,000 a month for a shared room. And so when you add the care costs on top of that, these are individuals of means who are in these rooms and taking up, and I understand that is fine, but I want to make sure you're clear that this is not for people who of modest means. My question that I would put to the gentleman is, are there going to be considerations for making rooms for the assisted living waiver program? That is a unique program that I'm sure he's familiar with, but that would be something to consider. Affordable housing is very different than just adding senior housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Christa. And up next is Susan Kirks, followed by Veronica O. And Susan, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I was present for the initial presentation of the concept that was presented to you. And I see coming back tonight that the developer is making an attempt to respond to some of the questions that were raised. One of the pieces of information in the staff report was how the habitat would be negatively impacted by this proposal, and I didn't see any information at all in response to that. So I'd just like to say that for many, many, many years, there's a colony of migratory cliff swallows who flies thousands of miles from Argentina to Petaluma every year to nest at the Lakeville Highway overpass and at the Petaluma River Bridge. And this year, because of the Riverfront housing development, was the only change that was noticed much of the colony was displaced and ended up building their nest in a pretty precarious and I would say dangerous location under the Petaluma River Bridge where they normally would not build their nests. So as I look at this property, and by the way, I've been doing a phenology project for Audubon in this location since 2016. This is just a totally inappropriate proposal. The land area there is actually not large at all. And this is a huge imposition in an area where there's a nearby hotel that's been built and a housing development that I can assure you is going to have many migratory cliff swallows trying to build their nest under the eaves of those homes. And the owners are not going to be able to power wash them off because they're protected by federal law. But the bigger picture here is for us in Petaluma, we have to learn, I think, or be comfortable saying no. No to this. The land acreage is small. This is a huge project for that area, stepping in the rest and filling in the rest of the very small open space that's left there. Really, what should happen there is a habitat restoration project and an enhancement to the environment in the area. And if I were you as a planning commissioner, this is the perspective I would bring to looking at a proposal like this, which is actually, it has some benefits for the community in a minimal way. It's really about whether or not the owner can sell the land and the developer will buy the land and how much profit they can make. So I hope that you'll take to heart our comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Up next is Veronica O. Veronica, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. Good evening, community and the developer. I'd like to just say tonight that I am always bothered by the fact that we have a proposal in front of us that we're not talking about what the initial intention was of the property and where we are now with climate change. I feel that if we are not going to follow our general plan and adhere to the guidelines, then we need to rethink everything. And that includes, are we supposed to be building on this site because of the river? So if we're going to make huge changes, we need to make them for Petaluma, not necessarily because it's, somebody else's business interest. I feel that the opportunity to make a walkable and vibrant community area for that neighborhood would include having active ground floor uses and where shoppers and pedestrians can interact with the built spaces. And there just aren't enough spaces on that lower floor to do that. In addition, I feel that having 4 stories instead of 3, that's a big deal. We need to make sure that the design that's going to come through on something like that is going to actually be, in congruence with everything else that's going on. I just feel like the space is very small and what was intended was 100 units. And now we have 172 being proposed. We had 30,000 square feet of retail space. Now we have 10,000. We have 31 parking spaces, now 57. I just don't understand how this adds up to be a walkable, bikeable, vibrant economic area for our community. I understand that there's a need for senior housing, but as one of the previous speakers intimated, this is not something that is going to be necessarily for our community. It will be for people that can afford a very high-priced offering. So I feel like this is a missed opportunity for us to really create an area that needs a lot of vibrancy. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Veronica. And I'm seeing no further hands raised. I'll pass the baton back to Vice Chair Bauer.
Great, thank you very much, Eric. And I see we have our city engineer, Gina Benedetti-Pecknick's hand is up. Gina, do you want to comment on or answer any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, or I'm sorry, Vice Chair Bauer. And I'm not city engineer any longer, sadly, but that's okay. I'm here representing Public Works, and that's what counts. And I just wanted to bring up, I wasn't able on the fly to pull up the drainage plans for the project. But I can do so after the meeting and relay the drainage routing from the project site. But if I may, I think I can share my screen, and I wanted to share with you the FEMA firm maps showing where the floodway and floodplains, both 100 and 500 year, are located, and also what one of our great sea level rise online resources shows for a sea level rise combined with a 100-year storm. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to find my, here we go. So, all right, FEMA and share. I'm going to share screen. That'll do it. Sorry for the delay. So this is publicly available information. This is nothing special. These are FEMA firm maps available online. And I wanted to share with you, I'm going to zoom out just a tad. Here we go. Here's 101 coming down screen top to bottom. Here's the floodway, the river, right? The floodway. Here's our project site here. Going to zoom in a bit. So the floodway is in this sort of yucky greenish gray color. And the 100-year floodplain, I'm going to double check, is the zone AE, is in this more of a darker yellow color. So this is the 100-year floodplain. You also see it over here. You see the 100-year floodplain in this around the McNear Peninsula on the inland side. And then the 500-year or 0.2%. Oh, that's zone X. That's absolutely nothing. Let me see here. If I can get to, I want to confirm 500-year there. So zone X, 0.2%. That's the 500-year flood hazard. So you can see that the project site, just based on FEMA flood, so this doesn't take into account sea level rise. This takes into account flood from our FEMA insurance maps. Doesn't have any of this area in the floodplain. So the entire property is not in the floodplain. This is a drainage area over here that we're not developing. And then I wanted to share with you more to I think the concerns and legitimate concerns of the public about sea level rise. I've pulled up the same area now on adaptingtorisingtides.org, another great website, again, absolutely open to anyone in the public to play around with. And I have put in a combination of, oh, interesting. I don't know if it's showing you all that. This is 36-inch sea level rise, and that's a ways out there. 36 inches of sea level rise is, depending on the probability profiles that you're looking at, is likely toward the end of the decade. I'm sorry, the end of the century. And then it's coupled with 100-year floodplain. So this is 100-year storm with sea level rise of 36 inches. And what we're seeing here, we're seeing some inundation in the blue over here. The red line along our property indicates overtopping at the bank, but notice it's not really coming into play along the development itself. Just a little bit along the bank here, a little bit here. So I wanted to share that, with the group. And I will point out that our development standards currently don't require sea level rise studies. They've been at the discretion of developers to provide that information on more recent submittals. This particular application is fairly, for the master plan, is fairly dated, and we weren't looking at sea level rise submittals at that point. So what I'm doing here is just offering you, what an applicant might have shown us had they been required to on sea level rise. Now, I'm going to zoom out here again. We have some inundation along Hopper, again in a 100-year storm and 36-inch sea level rise. So while nothing on the property is involved here, definitely there is, here I'm going to zoom out for you. We have some low-lying areas around it that are definitely going to be involved. So, and this is a ways out, and we're starting to do that planning as we work through our new general plan update and new flood modeling and sea level rise models. And we're going to be adapting our planning scenarios accordingly. But I wanted to share with you what we see and what the applicant would have seen had they looked at flooding and sea level rise at that point. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Gina.
Yeah, I have to stop sharing.
Now we'll move on to any remaining questions and also commissioner feedback and comments, and go to Council Liaison Fisher.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I don't have any questions. So I'll start with my comments, and I guess they're not very different than they were the last time we saw this proposal. And I think it's because this sort of use is not allowed in the T6 zone, and I couldn't make the findings to make that so. And I think to sort of zoom back out on the actual site itself and what's there, and the single family homes and the townhomes and what was envisioned on this portion as apartments and the hotel and the sports fields and the parks and the offices, it was really intended as a community, and a place where, you really wouldn't have to leave, right? You could have your office there, you could, walk your dog in the park, and kids couldn't go to school there, but that's the only thing missing. And so what was envisioned, as I understand, in this center was really a place for the community to come gather and to find their services and their goods that they needed. And I just don't see that in this plan. And I think we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And I agree that the peg got a little bit, more round, but not enough to fit in the hole. So that's where I stand on it. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Council Liaison Fisher. Moving on to Commissioner Hooper.
One clarifying point I'd like to make before I get into my comment is just that when I asked about how the stormwater infrastructure looked, it's partially because the rate at which we're going to be receiving high-paced storms has already been made clear to be more consistent as time goes on. The state has been very clear about that in recent months. I recognize that this project is dated, that the overall project area dates back to 2014, and there's probably quite a bit about it that is not where we probably wanted if the project had been approved today. And I don't mean the applicant, I mean the project area. So when I was asking about how it was going to withstand floodwater, withstand an atmospheric river, it was because I was just curious to know what the drainage situation looked like, what the stormwater situation looked like, because even regardless of the map that was shown, it looks like a small pool right now. I was just curious to know that if we had that in place, that's all. As for the project itself, I am frankly impressed with how much has been adjusted in the face of what the comments we gave at the last meeting where we saw this. I do want to say that I will be very interested to see what the affordable housing situation looks like. We're very interested to see how affordable even the senior living care looks, and if there's going to be scales of cost or scales of opportunity, especially for residents within the city. I do appreciate that this is not necessarily a use that is designed for T6. However, I do appreciate the fact that it is legitimately a mixed series of uses, some of which may not have been intended, but rather densely nestled together in the same area. And one final point I would like to make is just that getting this project off the ground seems to have been difficult. It now going through several potential developers to get this going. This may not be perfect, but I do recognize that this may be us getting closer to something that is even within earshot of what we had hoped or what the city had hoped back in 2014 when the Planning Commission and the council passed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hooper. Commissioner Alonso?
Thank you, Vice Chair Bauer, and thanks for all the public comments tonight. I wonder if the applicant or staff can comment on what Ms. Nelson from Senior Advocacy Services mentioned about the waiver process, and if someone could speak to that in her question, please.
I'm guessing that would be for Amir to address. I don't think that we have the background to respond to it as staff right now.
Yeah, I'm not, I guess with the waiver program, we would be open to it. I think the waiver program basically allows us, if the county is eligible and under the waiver program, allows an alternative skilled nursing placement through various forms of reimbursement from the state through, I think, Medi-Cal. I'm not too familiar with it. We haven't done the waiver program before, but we're open to looking into it.
Okay, thank you. Maybe if Ms. Nelson, you can email the commission and staff more information, and we can hear back from the applicant later on about that. I think that would be helpful for us at a future meeting. That's the only follow-up question I have, but I think in terms of my comments, I do appreciate the applicant coming back to us tonight with an improved proposal. I think oftentimes we ask for changes or different options, and sometimes applicants don't do much. But I think here tonight, there was a real effort made to try to improve this. It's not perfect, but I think it's something that will benefit the community. And I think with the additional housing, I think that's a big step. And I think we have to remember that the reduction in commercial space here is a benefit. Commercial space has been evolving. We've been talking about this for months, if not years now, before this commission on the challenges with mixed use. And when this project was approved, there was a lot more commercial space that was envisioned for this site, but that's really not what we're seeing on the ground in reality today. So I like how the applicant has adjusted the commercial space on their plans. And so I think it just makes more sense this way. But I do want to stress, as Commissioner Hooper mentioned about the affordability, I think I'd want to see more about that when this comes back. But overall, I do appreciate the applicant making an effort here. I think we want to try to see how this can benefit the community and how we can move this forward appropriately. And I just wanted to thank staff's work too in shepherding this along. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Alonso. Commissioner Wisman?
Yeah, thank you. And Vice Chair Bauer, if I may, I forgot to ask one question to staff earlier, but it did come up during public comment. So if I can just address staff with one point. It did come up, and I did ask last time when this came before the commission. what the status of the Caulfield overcrossing was, and just wondering if I know it was pretty much up in the air last time, and it was only in July, so just wondering the signs if there's been any update or anything to report on that.
Well, because we have the benefit of having Gina here to participate, I think that she'll probably be even more accurate than I could hope to be on this item.
Sure,
Gina?
thanks, Heather. It's a great question, Commissioner Wisman. The Caulfield Bridge crossing is in design. We've hit the 10% milestone on design. At that point, we re-estimate project costs and review design. We've made design changes very recently, accommodating some Corps of Engineer requirements, and have been working to update it. We are looking forward to bringing a crosstown connector presentation to City Council in the new year. And I'm going to beg your patience and join us in that presentation for the most recent update at that point. But suffice it to say, the project's not dead. We're working on it. Staff is committed to pursuing it. It's a very high priority from our council goals and priorities. And we acknowledge that and share that priority, and hope to have an update out to the community very soon.
Thank you, Gina.
Excellent. Thanks much. So just turning my comments on the applicant and staff report. First of all, I do applaud the applicant for addressing a vital need in our community to serve our seniors, and doing it in a way that includes them in the core of one of our communities, rather than
I'm not supportive of that, of the ground floor plan as is. But I do support all the other changes that were made, and I really want to thank the applicant for making those modifications. I just don't think they went far enough. So with that said, are there any other comments right now? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll go ahead and let's see, our next meeting.
Vice Chair,
Yes.
sorry, could staff just walk us through what are next steps for this project?
Sure.
So that'll depend on the applicant. If they, they've gotten additional comments on their revision. So it will depend if they move forward and submit an application. But I believe it would be site plan and architectural review and some discussion of the use findings is what would be needed for this project. There's no subdivision, there's no legislative changes needed. So if the applicant decides to move forward and submits a site plan and architectural review application, that would then be processed and brought before the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, so our next meeting looks to be on November 30th. And right now we have a study session on retail gun sales and I think the telecommunication ordinance, but maybe that's not happening. No, yeah, that's been moved too. So with that, I think we'll adjourn the meeting and everybody, I guess we'll see you after Thanksgiving. So everybody have a really, really nice Thanksgiving and I look forward to seeing you after that. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Recording stopped.